Alright, so welcome back. This is video 6 of the collecting game for the year 2022. Recording this on Valentine's Day, 2/14, and obviously if you're in my class, you're following. If you're not following, you're following obviously an earlier video. But where we left off on the last time, on video 5, was we finished the specific step down in scores and text. So let's get down to scores and text. Here we go. Scores and text, and we finished step 4, or we got up to step 4. So we'll double check and see. So at this point, we added another condition that destroyed overlapping objects such as the collectible itself. And then obviously at this point, we're going to back out, and we created a object that's based off of text. So it's a text object. It's called text score. We're going to set the actual static text to score:0. We're going to choose impact, but you at this class, if you're following, all of you can choose your own text in your own color. I'd encourage you to do it. And then the horizontal, vertical, and hotspot to center. So we're going to have to double check to see what he means by that. So let's go and look. So we're going to go to layout. Here's your score. I mentioned this yesterday or Friday. When you double click, you can obviously type in text and then insert it. You insert it, and obviously when you drag this box, this is your text box. So if the text gets larger than the box, it will trim it and you will not see it. So for example, if you're going to have a score that goes to 2 digits, as soon as this goes to 10, it'll look like it goes to 0 because the 0 will be cut off. So you want to make sure you have enough space. And then if I open this up, you can double click it and you can actually see the text there. All right. Moving forward, we have our score. We are going to make sure it's on the proper layer. And it should be the bottom of the layer in the player layer. So let's just open and close this. Here's player layer. It's opening and closing. Z. The Z order has to deal with what's going on here on the screen. If I were to make the Z order of this be at the top, then this would be behind the label. So we want to make sure that the game takes place on top of the score, so the score does not get in the way of the player succeeding the game. You wouldn't want someone saying, I lost because I couldn't see, right? And I'm sure you've heard that many times playing games. Oh, it's the camera, I can't see, right? So with that happening, what I want to do is move on to the next few steps, okay? We're going to go back to the event sheet, okay? And then we're going to have a set of code that says collectibles overlapping another object destroy the enemies in the family. And actually, I think we did do that. So if I go over to the steps here, here's what we did. And anytime a collectible overlaps an enemy, if the enemy appears and a collectible is already there, the enemy dies. It blows up. Okay? And we already have the particle behavior coded in. So the particles shoot out when the enemy is destroyed. Okay? So we're caught up there. And at that point, we are going to start here, like I said. So we're going to go back to layout. We are going to clone the object. We're going to rename it text message. And we're going to make the box bigger and do a couple things to it. So let's move this over here. Let's jump over here. Oh, I didn't want to close the... Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to jump over to the layout. We're going to right-click on the object that we want to clone. And then when you do that, you're going to go down to here. So you're going to create a separate object. And then obviously that separate object will be over here with a duplicate name. Okay, so text score, this should be text messages. All right, or text message. So let's rename this. And we're going to type message. And we obviously have to make the box bigger. This is going to be the message that's going to tell you what to do when you play the game. We're going to see here a couple things I'm going to figure out. Obviously, we could center this. We want to increase the font to 72. And we're going to take the text and we're going to change it to collect white squares. The instructions say collect white circles, but we aren't collecting white circles. So let's make the text 68, a little bit smaller. And this is just going to be on the screen when you play it, and then it should disappear. Alright, you want to center it. You also want to set the Z order of this thing to be in the back. So right click on it, and you're going to go over to Z order, and then you're going to send it to the bottom. Which, once again, everything will be in front of this. Okay? So I'm just going to pull in my instructions here. And what we're going to do right here is on the event sheet, we're going to take the text message we just made, and then on start of layout, we're going to wait 3 seconds, and then we're going to set the opacity 20%. So you'll see it, but it's not going to be the primary focus of the game. Okay, and then move on start of layout to the top of the organization, so that we're going to put it at the top of the event sheet so it's organized and easy to read. And then we're going to wait another 3 seconds, and then we're going to set it to 0. So there'll be a couple different instructions. Okay, let's go over to do that. We have our object already named, so we can code it correctly. So we're going to go over to the event sheet. We'll move this to the top later, and it's going to be system on start of layout. We are going to wait 3 seconds, so it's a wait. And we're going to wait 3 seconds. And then after we wait 3 seconds, we're going to double click the text message, and then you just type in set opacity, and that's how transparent and opaque it is. And we're going to set the opacity to 20 seconds. We're going to bring this all the way to the top of our event sheet. So we just drag this. System every tick. We'll do it right above it. On start a layout. The first thing we do is we start the layout, so it should be the first set of instructions. Just copy and paste this a second time. Copies event action pair, waits another second. Okay, not the whole group. I'm going to delete that. We want to copy these and paste them below. In the video, you just saw me duplicate code by just dragging. I'm going to undo that so you can watch. So if everyone on the screen in class here watch on the screen, I'm going to undo this. If I want to duplicate this set of code, if I hold control before I do this next operation, it will clone it. So I'm going to hold control and I'm going to drag down, and you're going to see a black line. When I let go, it'll be a duplicate. That's with holding control on the key, on the keyboard the whole time. All right, so now after 3 seconds, we're going to set opacity to 0. So it's going to take 6 seconds to fade, but first 3 seconds, 80% of it's going to go away. And then the last 20% of it will go away after that. Let's see if it works. It says start. I'm waiting for 3 seconds. The opacity changed, and now the opacity turned it to 0. Yeah, it's still there, but we're not interacting with it. No, the score is not going up right now, but the behavior of the game works. Believe it or not, the variable, I believe, is going up. It's just that we are not telling the player the game is actually going up. I think, Claire, you've had that a number of times, right? I think it was like the score. Everybody forgets that. Just because you add score +1 doesn't mean the user knows. I bet if I ran the debug mode right here, we could look at score and watch the number go up. So let's try that. Debug mode. Open this up. Let's find our variable score here. We got to find our variable score. It's listed here. I always have a hard time finding this. Here's our tick count. If you want to see like every tick, this is what the ticks look like. So it's definitely not a millisecond. Let's bring this down. Player text score. We don't want system enemies rotate. Why can't I find the global variable should be there. I cannot find it. System. I can't find it off the top of my head, but if you look here, I'm going to zoom this out so you can see the game. Over here on the right, on the left, you can see collectibles going in and out, changing in number. What those are, and this is helpful to understand something in the future, what those things are instances of those objects. Every time a collectible is made, it's actually given a unique identifier so that it knows. And believe it or not, individually, those unique things can have their own variables too. But this is the system creating them at the time. Now, somewhere in this material, there should be score. Anyway, variable score. So right now I'm set to 3 because coincidentally, 3 collectibles actually respond on top of the player, and they just happen to pop. But if you're trying to check to see how your game is working, the debug mode really helps. So for some reason, I could not find this right here. But as I collect, you're going to see them go up. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So all of this is going on right here. Sadly, none of it's being reported up here. So what we need to do now is link this label to this variable so they can update. So once again, if you're seeing this, and I hope this is recording, we want to make sure that number goes into that number. And I'm hoping what I'm doing right now on the screen is being recorded. We'll find out when I look at the YouTube video. Okay? So that's the debug mode, and it's really helpful. Okay? Making the game over logic work. So we're going to add global variable is alive. Right click, global variable. We need to make sure that when the game is over and it sees 0, that's how everything shuts off. So is alive. We're going to leave it as a number type, and we're going to initialize it to 0. I'm going to go to the bottom of this event sheet until it tells me to move it up. I won't. So at this point, we're going to add a global variable is alive. We did that. I'm sorry, we are going to initialize it at 1. We want you to be alive when you start the game. And then at the bottom, we're going to add an event. When you overlap anything from the enemies family, is alive is going to go to 0. So it's the player. So when the player is overlapping another object, and the object is from the family enemies. The reason why this is helpful, and everyone in the class here obviously should understand this, we put all of the enemies, which is sign horizontal, sign vertical, and the enemy rotate. They're in a family. If we didn't put them in a family, we'd have to do this 3 times. So by me selecting the family group, anytime the player overlaps the enemy, we're going to set is alive to 0. Okay, so I don't have to do this 3 different times. So system set value is alive is going to be set to 0 anytime. All right. Now it says add another event. What happens when it does see 0? We are going to restart the layout. Okay, so we're not even going to give the user a chance to think about it. Game's going to be over. Everything's going to restart. So restarting layout will be system compare 2 values. So system compare, right? And now we're going to say is alive is equal to 0. So when is alive is 0, we're going to then restart the layout. So we'll go to action, system, restart layout. Okay, we also need to do, now when the game restarts, is alive will still be at 0 and the score will still be at whatever it was at. Just because you told it to restart doesn't mean the variables restart. So what we need to do is add another set of instructions that set is alive to 1 and score to 0 on the start of layout. So do we have something that has start of layout? Right here. Okay, so we're going to wait 3 seconds. We're going to turn the opacity. We're going to wait 3 seconds. We'll add it to this group. So we're going to add an action. And we're just going to go to System. We're going to set value. And right now we're going to, is alive, you're going to be resurrected, right? You're going to be brought back to life from 0. So we're going to say done. I'm going to bring that up to the top of the group because I think that's the first thing that should happen. You're brought back to life. 3 seconds, the opacity changes. 3 seconds, the opacity changes. Now, is alive is not the only thing we need to reset. We also need to reset our variable score. So System, set value. And then you're going to change this down to score. And we want to reset the score. Now, we still have not tied this score to the actual variable, so it's killing me, but we're all going to go in time. Add enemies family setup passes 0. Okay, let's just test what we have and see. Okay, our white squares fading. Let's see if I hit an enemy, will it restart the layout? Restarted the layout, right? Anytime I hit an enemy, everything gets reset. So right now the opacity is going to 20, but something just landed on top of me, so it reset. You would see that if obviously the 0 was changing, okay? I'm going to look ahead in the instructions because I want to just see. Yeah, they do have it, it's just not in the order I would have added it. Find the enemies uncreated and add find enemies uncreated. So we need to find enemies uncreated. So we're going to do enemies uncreated. Okay. 5 to 8 seconds, we destroy them. Add an action to the family that sets the opacity to 0. Okay. I don't see the reason for this, but I'm going to trust the instructions. Enemies family, set opacity to 0. Find every tick. So we're going to go up to every tick right here. We're going to add a condition that says try to right-click, add another condition here. This is considered a subcondition. It's going to be enemies, family. Compare opacity. This is something we've never done before in the class. And the comparison is going to be less than 100 Hold on, that's not where I want this. Let's delete that one more time. And I'm a little bit caught up. I'm going to pull up my instructions so the people in the video can see this, as well as you. Right here, we found the system every tick. We're going to add a subcondition, which means it's subordinate to the main condition. Okay, so it's supposed to be something in addition to. If the enemies are less than 100, we're going to set the opacity to self plus 4. Let's try this one more time, and if this doesn't look like it's a critical step, we could probably skip this. But let me see, add another condition, a sub-event, enemies. Compare opacity less than 100. I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more on this when I finish it, because I think at this point this is going to be a tricky spot of the process. So opacities are less than 100. We're going to set enemies opacity as self.opacity plus 4. So enemies set opacity to self.opacity plus 4. Alright, I want to test this and see what it does. Taking a look. Kind of trying not to hit the collectibles. I'll get back to you on what it's doing because I'm not seeing it, but I'm going to trust that it's needed, and we're going to let this is what they're calling a subcondition. When you click on your parts of code, you can click on little parts of the code, or you can click on like the left edge and get all of it. In order to do this, to create a subcondition, you have to left edge, left click your code, then right click and go add another condition. I chose sub event because that was a mistake in the instructions. This is a sub event, and then once again this becomes subordinate. So this will only happen if this happens, but this will happen all the time, and it's part of one big group. Okay, a little confusing. We're going to find overlapping. This is going to let the player get away from spawning enemies. So we're going to find overlapping enemies. We're going to add another condition. All right, let's do overlapping enemies. Players overlapping collectible. Players overlapping enemies. Add another condition. Compare. So it's going to be add another condition, and it's going to be enemies compare opacity. It's going to be greater than or equal to, and we're going to say 100. Find players overlapping enemies. Player overlapping enemies. This one. Sorry, I put it in the wrong spot. Alright. They want to do the same thing for collectibles, so I'm just going to hold control and drag this code up to it, and it will be automatically joined. We have this one. And this one. Change this to collectibles. Done. Finally, in the every tick, this is where the game finally finishes. We are going to set the text score to score and the number. So we're going to go every tick. Alright, and we are going to system set text. Do text score set text to score space ampersand score, and that's the global variable. Hit done. You should see the score go up now. There's 1, there's 2, oh, just died, my score did not go back to 0. Up here, when the game resets, we need to set our text back to 0. So we're going to do add action, text message, set text, and this is static. This only happens really quickly, but score, :, 0. Every time the layout restarts, the variable and the label should restart now. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to die now. Did not update. Why? I'm going to move that set of code down to when you touch the enemy. I think that would probably be more appropriate. Layer, so overlapping enemies, set is alive to 0. And then set score to 0. And then when is alive is 0, restart the layout. Let's try this again. 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. Okay. So for whatever reason, the restart layout instructions did not do it. So what I did was I put the set the score text to 0 in the when you overlap with enemy. So right now I'm at a score of 3. I'm going to touch this and it's going to go to 0, and then collect white squares shows up again. So that's obviously how the game ends. And essentially, the game should be over. Let's take a look, save. Honestly, at this point, the only thing that we haven't done, and I'm going to leave this up for people to do, is to add a game over screen. So instead of this happening where it says collect white squares when start a layout, when it goes like this and it says collect white squares, maybe it should say something else like game over and then have it fade, or try again, or some sort of like words of encouragement. But when I walk around the room, I should be able to have you drag around the player, collect obviously the squares that you see that are white, have them go up, and obviously if you hit the other colors, they'll go down. I don't care what colors you choose. We chose gray and white and green. Your choice. You don't even need to choose squares. You know how to swap out artwork to a limited degree. So if you want to make this like a theme, make it a theme. It can be food for all I care. I don't care if those are like floating cupcakes, right? It could be Harry Potter theme where you have the floating cupcakes. And you can play as Crumb and you can get the cupcakes and then fall asleep. But anyway, you get the idea. Collecting game is essentially over. I left a little bit of the details out, but at this point I think if you've been following along, you can do this on your own. So this was a long video. I know it was. I appreciate you staying quiet. And if you have any questions, obviously let me know.